just human life, day to day.
Yeah.
I think that's very important to be grounded, because I think when you get too lost in these spiritual dimensions without having the grounding, it can be more dangerous. Any spiritual practice, I feel
Yeah,
like.
definitely.
I feel like even Christianity
Oh
could
yeah.
be dangerous if you don't have that grounding. And I've seen it with
Oh, you're
people
right.
who get too inflamed with pride or something like that, and they become self-righteous, like that typical. I don't want to say that's a
Yeah, but
typical
even the
Christian, but
mystical
yeah.
practice of the church, like in the Orthodox Church, we have a mystical practice which is called
Hmm.
hesychasm or the Jesus prayer, and it's a prayer which is repeated, and then it's also coupled with a breathing, with a breathing which rhythms the prayer,
Okay.
and
Like, how do you
and
do this? Is this just a quick thing? Is it like you breathe in, you say half the prayer, and then you breathe out? And
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is really kind of the basic structure of Orthodox mysticism, and everybody does the Jesus prayer, like everybody prays that. But there is an idea that some people will pray the Jesus prayer in a manner that they become, or the prayer enters into their heart, and that they actually kind of the prayer takes over their being, and that they kind of become just the prayer. And so
Hmm.
there's even this idea that at some point your heartbeat rhythms with the prayer, and that your heartbeat becomes the prayer. And so the
Hmm.
fathers will say, don't do that. Like, if you don't have a guide, like if you don't have someone to guide you, like, do not do this. You will become insane. Like, it will
Huh.
lead you to insanity if you go in this direction. If you try to kind of to pray without ceasing, like to just kind of, because this is the idea that they try to do, is they try to the monks basically try to become constant prayer, where their entire being is kind of caught up in this prayer, and it leads to illumination. It leads to theosis, to basically being united with God. But they tell you, like, don't do it without a guide, because it's super dangerous, and it'll make you, it could drive you crazy, and monks go crazy.
Wow.
You go to these monasteries, let's say on Mount Athos, and you'll just meet crazy monks who lost their mind because they became prideful, or they just weren't being they didn't accept to be guided, or they just did their own thing, and then they just lose their mind.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how that attitude is so universal, because even in the psychedelic world, let's say with ayahuasca, a lot of people are like, no, don't you dare do this without a shaman. And then even to go beyond that, it's like you got to be very careful which shaman you choose, because again, you're even in these new age practices, most reasonable people are aware that you are opening doors. You know what I mean? And you have to be very careful with what slips through. And
Yeah.
even if something seems good, it might not be good. It's hard to know. Like, how can you explore these realms smartly and safely, or is it one of those best not to mess with that kind of stuff, or it just depends on who you are as a person?
I mean, I've never done psychedelics, so it's like I can't speak from experience. I feel like, let's see, from a more traditional perspective, it's definitely more on the dangerous side, in the sense that the idea of a real spiritual practice is to be transformed, right? It's
Yes.
to actually rise up in the hierarchy of being, is like through humility, not through pride, but like through humility and practice and spiritual discipline, that you actually become more like the angels, become more like God. And so it's not so much to just have these experiences of this world, but rather to kind of participate and rise up in the hierarchy of being, you would say. You see this image called the ascent of the divine ladder, where
Yeah.
you see monks going up a ladder, and there's Christ above. And Christ is the goal, right? We're actually aiming towards Christ, to become like him, to be united with him. And then there are angels that are kind of helping along the way. But then there are also demons. You see it in the image. Like, these demons are like pulling the monks down, and they fall into like the mouth of Hades at the bottom of the image. Um, and so, yeah, their idea is not to either experience the angels or experience the demons, right? Their idea is to aim towards the transcendent, aim towards Christ, aim towards the place where heaven and earth meet, and then you will encounter them along the way. But that's not the point. And so the problem with I think with a lot of the psychedelic stuff is that people kind of rip open the veil and then move into this world, and they have these experiences, but they're not better people. Right? They're not freer from their own demons. They're not freer from their own passions. And so, yeah, so they're more in danger than they would be if they would just kind of stay in the normal world. And well, I say that, but look, I'd be honest with you. I know several people that did psychedelics and then converted and then just became Christian. So it's not
I've heard that. That's the thing that throws a wrench in my whole thinking about this, because I don't have necessarily a strong opinion of psychedelics or this or that, because they're so mysterious and they have so many different outcomes for different people. However, I would say that at the state that humanity is right now, it probably would be more dangerous than it is good. But I don't know if that's necessarily the psychedelics themselves, but just where humans are, because we're very prideful and very naive and can fall into these traps, you know?
And also because we're materialists, and so I can see it, like I can totally see it, because it's like, for all my love of Jordan Peterson, like I love Jordan Peterson, you know, but I think that this is one of the dangers that he's falling into. It's because it's easy to, you can analyze it, right? It's a mushroom. It's like, here's the chemical formula, right? Here's the thing, it's right there. Just take it, you eat it, and there you go. So it's like, it's super easy. So the most materialist, the most scientific person can say, like, this is like, this works. It's a pill. You take it, you have this experience, you can analyze it, you can calculate it, you can look at the person's brain and you can see their waves, whatever it's going on. And so it seems like a kind of materialist shortcut, you know, to the spiritual life. But I think that that's also why it's a problem. Like, I think that that's why it's a problem, is because, you know, look at even like at the way that, I don't know if you saw that discussion you had with the guy who wrote this, what is it, like, I forget what it is. There's something about how mushrooms are at the source of our religions or whatever. Some book about that.
Yes, I actually had him on. The Immortality Key, is that right?
I think that's maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But look at what they're doing. It's like, so think of the mysteries of Eleusis, for example, right? So you have this entire ritual that lasts several days and is extremely engaging and is like sworn to secrecy. You're not allowed to talk about it. There's a whole thing around the entire mystery of Eleusis. And then maybe at some point in this thing where they come, let's say, to the edge of it, then there's a substance involved in the experience. But now the materialist wants to just say, all that ritual stuff, it's all bullshit. It's the mushroom.
It's the mushroom, dude.
Like, it's the formula that I can analyze and that I can show you and that I can measure and so it's just such a materialist way of looking at reality, that even if maybe in some cultures psychedelics were part of the process of transformation of the person, the idea that they were the central part of it is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense, and it's super dangerous, and it's like a materialist way of approaching, you know, these ancient myths, these stories, these patterns of transformation, so I tend to really be very cynical about this stuff.
Well, even Carl Jung was cynical about it. And it's because it's funny because even myself, a lot of psychedelic people quote Carl Jung, like he's our Lord and Savior, but even he's like, beware of unearned wisdom, don't do psychedelics. Pretty much, he didn't say those exact words. He did say beware of unearned wisdom, but he was very. But then again, man, he went through like a 10-year psychosis, so it's like, I don't need to open any more doors. I'm good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he also had, I think, that problem where he didn't accept to be guided, you know. And there are stories about Jung, like, you know, even like from a not a Christian perspective, you know, there are stories of him, you know, going to India, but then refusing to be guided by the supposed masters that he encountered there, and that he wouldn't even meet with them. Like, he's a scientist. Like, in the end, he ended up, and I think that he didn't, like, he was never, like, I don't think he ever ended up being either a practicing Christian or an initiate of anything. He was just someone from the outside who was trying to explain these things and then got cracked open, just got cracked open is the only way to see
Oh
it, I
man,
think.
could you imagine
So,
that? Like going to bed, sleeping with a revolver under your pillow, and having these attacks by these entities every day. I'm surprised he didn't like end up killing himself, man. That's like,
yeah,
that sounds like hell to me. But I'm glad that he got some knowledge out of it and came out the other side. Thank God.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it is what it is.